This is the Palazzo Ducale, or in English, the Doge's Palace. So first, a bit of important information. The full price ticket is €25 for this, and it's actually a combined ticket with the Museo Correr, Museo Archeologico Nazionale, and the monument rooms of the Biblioteca Nazionale Marciana. Well, actually, I didn't go to any of the other places. I just came here. So let's look at the history. The first seat of the Doge was built around the 10th century on this site. In the 13th century, it reached the size it is today, as then the building needed to house more and more people for duties of state. This is the room of four doors. This is the antechamber for the most important rooms in the palace. It was devastated by a fire in the 16th century, and the whole area of the palace had to be refurbished. So it wasn't just this room, it was many of the following rooms as well. The room is a celebration of the grandeur and might of Venice at that time. You are now seeing the antechamber for the full council. So this is where the foreign ambassadors used to wait to meet the council. The main fresco shows Venice distributing honors and rewards. And this is also one of the few rooms where you can sit down actually. So use it. I promise you, you'll need to sit down. It's a long, long way. You are now in the council chamber. So this was actually one of my favorite rooms because it's very ornate, but it's not too big, and it also has interesting clocks. Anyway, this is where the full council gathered, which had many different groups and each carried out important functions in the governing of the city-state. As a whole, they were mainly responsible for organizing and coordinating the work of the Senate. The large canvas over the seats commemorates the victory over the Turks at Lepanto in 1571. The ceiling celebrates the good government of the Republic. The central panel, which you are now seeing, is the triumph of faith. this is a small room called the Senate chamber. The Senate was one of the oldest public institutions in Venice. It had first been founded in the 13th century. In the works produced for this room by Tintoretto, Christ is clearly the predominant figure. Perhaps that is a reference to the Senate conclave which elected the Doge. The election was seen as being under the protection of the Son of God. Now, this small room has a very interesting name. It's called the Compass Room. This room was the antechamber where those who had been summoned by the powerful magistrates waited to be called. This wooden door in the corner leads to a torture chamber, so you wouldn't want to go through there. After the compass room, you reach the armory. It's full of very decorative weapons, such as swords, crossbows, whatever you can think of, it's there. There are even very interesting, not so medieval weapons as well. If you're a fan of medieval weaponry, you'll love this room. This is the chamber of the Great Council. What you are seeing now is the longest canvas painting in the world, Il Paradiso. Tintoretto and his workshop produced it between 1588 and 1592. The final effect is of an overpowering tumult that seems to celebrate the greatness of the Republic more than it does the triumph of God. This is one of the largest rooms in Europe. Here, meetings of the Great Council were held, the most important political body in the Republic. It was made up of all the male members of patrician Venetian families over 25 years old, irrespective of their individual status, merits, or wealth. The walls were decorated with episodes of Venetian history. The ceiling was decorated with the virtues and individual examples of Venetian heroism. From the windows of the room, you can take great pictures of the courtyard. What you are now seeing is the inside of the Bridge of Sighs. So this is where all those people used to go through, and that's the window they used to look through. So now let me tell you a bit about the prison. The Doge's palace used to house not only the Doge's apartments, the seat of the government, and the city's courtrooms, but also a jail. It was only in the second half of the 16th century that Antonio da Ponte ordered the construction of new prisons built by Antonio Contin, so I love Antonios, around 1600, which were linked to the Doge's palace by the Bridge of Sighs. Giacomo Casanova, its most famous prisoner, in his biography describes escaping through the roof, re-entering the palace, and exiting through the Porta della Carta. So, in all those Casanova movies that you must have watched, that was actually a true story. Recently, I actually read a novel where they described how dark and dank the cells were. If you paid some money to the right people, your relatives could be put into a higher cell which had more light and air. So, and this is the courtyard of the prison. Not a very nice place, is it? Oh, look at that corridor. Oof.